After taking turns using a telescope to peep at some women in an apartment across the street, 2 security guards at New York City's Millennium Building move towards the elevator. One leaves for a moment to make use of the bathroom. While in the bathroom, his colleague notices the elevators acting strangely, and he ends up getting his flashlight crushed between the elevator's doors. His colleague soon comes out of the bathroom and the two of them enter the elevator. In the morning, after an exercise session, a group of pregnant women enter the elevator, and the machine starts to descend. The elevator moves strangely fast, and then comes to a halt abruptly. One of the women presses the open button, but it doesn't work, and now they realize that they are stuck in the elevator, with no network service on their phones. It gets unbearably hot in the elevator and 2 of the pregnant women start to experience labor. Attempts to open the elevator doors are not successful, and strange enough, the elevator starts to go down the shaft, even when it has been disconnected from electricity. In the end, the elevator stops on the ground floor. The doors open and 2 of the pregnant women have given birth to their babies. In a restaurant elsewhere, Mark Newman, a mechanic who works with Meteor Elevator Company, gets physically assaulted by a customer for interfering in his discussion with the waitress. While still in the restaurant, Mark's colleague Jeff gets a call about the malfunctioning elevator in the Millennium Building. The 2 mechanics abandon the food they've ordered and head to the Millennium Building right away. Elsewhere, journalist Jennifer Evans is sent to the Millennium Building to write about the incident. Jennifer arrives as the women are being evacuated, with many onlookers around. Mark and Jeff soon arrive at the Millennium Building to investigate and fix the elevator. The staff member from the Millennium Building takes them to the engine room, and while in the engine room, Tim talks about their colleague Kowalski, who had apparently died by taking his own life. He equally talks about the intense lightning strikes that occurred last night and the chances of the lightning being responsible for the malfunctioning of the elevator. Jeff dismisses the idea, and Tim leaves the engine room soon enough. The mechanics conclude their investigation without detecting any specific fault with the elevator. After getting his hair done in a salon, a blind man named Mr. Faith leaves the salon with his dog. He enters the elevator, but the elevator takes him to the wrong floor. The elevator doors open and soon Mr. Faith realizes that the buttons are not working correctly. He decides to take another. He opens the doors, but there is nothing to step into. His dog warns him by barking, but Mr. Faith doesn't understand. He falls into the elevator shaft, pulling his dog along with him. Meanwhile, Mark visits and tries to reconcile with his girlfriend, but then it turns out she has begun dating another guy. Later in a restaurant with Jeff and his fiancée, Mark gets drunk as he talks about his breakup. At the Millennium Building, the 2 security guards are informed about some of the elevators acting strangely. The guards confirm that the doors seem to be opening and closing on their own. A set of doors open, and the security guard looks into it. He finds Mr. Faith's dog in the shaft. His head then gets stuck between the elevator's doors, and afterward, he is decapitated by a descending elevator. In the bathroom, Jennifer meets Mark and tries to get more information about the incidents from Mark. Upon her persistence, Mark says, quite sarcastically, that elevators like to eliminate people, and that 1 person out of every 10 people who enter an elevator gets eliminated. Of course, Jennifer isn't satisfied with the answer she received, so she tries to follow Mark out of the bathroom, but the security guards restrain her. Jeff and Mark meet manager Milligan and the other executives and inform them that they've thoroughly checked the elevator, and there is nothing wrong with it. Mark tries to admit possible limitations from their end, but Jeff interrupts and reassures the executives that the elevator is safe. Mark arrives at the workshop the following morning, only to find out that the words he said to Jennifer have been published in the newspapers. His boss Mitchell calls him into his office and confronts him about his statement. Mark apologizes and promises not to repeat such mistakes. Later that day, Mark learns about Mr. Steinberg, a German technician who works with the elevator company. Next, 2 roller skaters enter the garage of the Millennium Building, and one collides with a car and falls. He sits on the floor for a while, and shortly afterward, the elevator doors open and the skater is pulled in. The elevator takes him up to the 86th floor and hurls him out of the building. The skater falls and crashes on the ground, next to his colleague, splashing blood onto his colleague. Mark learns about the accident, which has been labeled as a self-elimination, on TV. He quickly heads to the Millennium Building. However, he is not allowed into the building when he arrives. Outside, the executives are giving a statement to the press about the incident. Mark finds Jennifer nearby and quickly moves toward her. Jennifer apologizes for the published story, which apparently has made Mark a suspect. Mark asks Jennifer about the most recent incident, and she tells him that a man jumped off from the 86th floor through the windows. It is believed to be a case of self-elimination, but Jennifer doesn't seem to believe this. Jennifer pays Mark a surprise visit to his home and shows him a video of the skater's death. From the video, everything was strange about the skater's death. The way he was pulled into the elevator, how he was hurled out of the window, and perhaps the most disturbing aspect of it is that it took just about 2 seconds to take the skater to the 86th floor when it should be about 40 seconds. Mark and Jennifer meet Jeff to show him the videotape, but Jeff doesn't want to watch the tape. Jeff enters the company van and drives off. At a restaurant, Mark explains to Jennifer how the elevator works, and during the discussion, Jennifer asks where Mr. Steinberg comes into the process. Mark tells Jennifer that Steinberg designs the electronic part of the elevator. Later in Jennifer's office, they research Steinberg on the computer and discover that his first name is Gunther. They equally learn that Steinberg was at some point involved in the production of some biochips using dolphin brains. Steinberg started working with the elevator company after losing his previous jobs. And now Jennifer strongly believes that Steinberg has a hand in what's going on. Jennifer comes up with the idea of breaking into the Millennium Building and checking the engine room. In the morning, Mr. Milligan discovers Jeff's body in the elevator. The executives release a press statement with regard to Jeff's death. They are of the opinion that Jeff had a hand in the previous accidents that happened in the elevator. The executives equally assure the public that the elevator is safe now. Jennifer finds Steinberg seated at the table as the executives address the press. She wants to ask him about the biochips, but Mark stops her from asking the question. Outside, Mark tells Jennifer about Kowalski, saying he was a deceased colleague of theirs, and now he suspects that it could be that both Jeff and Kowalski were eliminated for probably having knowledge of what's going on in the elevator. And perhaps Jeff is now being framed as being responsible for the incidents. Mark and Jennifer meet Jeff's fiancée, who reveals to them that Kowalski died the same way as Jeff. Jennifer and Mark go on to visit Kowalski's widow in her apartment. Jennifer manages to unlock the door and the two enter the home. Nobody seems to be in the home at the time, and in one of the rooms, Jennifer and Mark find Kowalski's portrait on an altar. Kowalski's widow suddenly appears behind them and tells them that Kowalski was actually eliminated, and didn't die by accident. According to her, Kowalski still haunts the elevator. When asked if Kowalski told her what was wrong with the elevator, Mrs. Kowalski says that anyone who knows what's wrong with the elevator is going to die. She says it's not over yet, and things are going to get worse. Later that day, a group of people enter the elevator and it starts to ascend at a dangerously high speed, causing the floor of the elevator to pull off, and most or all of the people in the elevator get eliminated. The President of the United States releases a statement about the incident, calling it an act of terrorism and promising that his administration will do its best to put an end to this. Later, one of the executive members, aware of Steinberg's involvement with the malfunctioning elevator, confronts Steinberg. He tells Steinberg to find a way of putting an end to it, but Steinberg is afraid he can't stop it now. Presently, the Millennium Building has been sealed off to the public as FBI agents carry out a thorough investigation within and around the building. In an attempt to break into the building, Jennifer drives a company van, pretending to be a mechanic working with the elevator company, while Mark hides in the back. At the checkpoint, Jennifer is stopped and asked to open the back of the vehicle. She reluctantly gets down, and while trying to open the back, Chip from the office calls and informs Jennifer that from his research, experiments with biochips are still ongoing, except that this time, dolphin brains are not used. He warns Jennifer to be careful. Mark manages to sneak out of the van and enter the Millennium Building. Meanwhile, the police confirm that Jennifer wasn't sent by the elevator company, and so she's locked up in a room in the building. In the building, Mark continues hiding from the FBI agents as he tries to accomplish his goal of finding and destroying the biochip. Soon he discovers the large brain-like organ made by Steinberg, which is responsible for all the incidents. He stabs the organ repeatedly, but then he has to leave when a burning elevator starts descending toward him. Mark returns to the organ after some time, carrying a missile launcher. He tries to shoot the organ, but Steinberg appears and points a gun at him. Mark manages to get the gun out of Steinberg's hand and the two scuffle on the floor. Steinberg nearly kicks Mark down the shaft, but Jennifer intervenes and holds Steinberg at gunpoint. Mark gets up and picks up the missile launcher to shoot the organ. Steinberg stands in the way, and just then, the FBI agents arrive at the scene and order them to drop their weapons. Steinberg quickly grabs hold of Jennifer, but she manages to pull away from his grip. Some elevator cables from the shaft pull Steinberg and Mark in. However, Jennifer is fast enough to pass the missile launcher to Mark. Mark grabs the launcher and eliminates the organ. The force of the explosion then pushes him out. Steinberg's corpse is discovered moments after the explosion. The story ends with Mark giving Jennifer a smooch as the elevator takes them down.